So, Joseph and the principle of a greater good. Like Graham pointed out to me earlier, we all know the story of Joseph quite clearly. He's heard it plenty enough. But I don't think we've all heard it exactly the way it's being shared tonight. Or at least, I hope you take something new from it. What is our initial reaction when life starts not making so much sense? When you get just one bad call after the other, or just these little things just slowly start to add up, and you just start thinking, ew, no man, enough is enough. Ek het genoeg gehad, I'm done. What is our reaction then? How many of us turn straight to God and go, God, what's going on? Or how many of us just give the bin a little kick on our way past it, or maybe we just get a bit frustrated and we mutter under our breath? What happens when the people you trust the most betray you? Maybe in business, yes, you had this verbal contract with a guy, you quoted him, lunch was fantastic, you thought, no, this is in. Next week, sorry, these guys undercut you by whatever percent. What happens if you are praying for healing, you're praying for provision, and these prayers are just, at least from your perspective, just not being answered? What is our reaction? Where are we going to? Where are we drawing strength from? So, if anyone understands this well, I would say it's Joseph. That oak had it tough. For those of you who were here on Sunday, I received a pretty cool prophecy. Sunday morning, first service, I was sitting at the back of church, as far away from the stage as I could possibly get. I was even hiding behind the pillar. I don't know if it was intentional, but I just thought, you know what, I'm going to sit behind there. I'm going to sort of just sit like this and watch Wes preach. And it was good. I received the message. It was fantastic. I was feeling a bit tired. Anyway, during the break between the two services, the YA guys were serving. And we're running around, we're sorting stuff out. And I came back into second service with just a renewed vigor, just more joy, more energy. And I thought, no, I'm not going to sit behind the pillar again. And I came and sat right here in the front. Wes gets a word for me, and it's a beautiful prayer that he gave me, and it was just so special. I haven't taken it as a promise from God. For those of you who don't know, the word was pastor. I haven't taken it as a promise from God yet. I'm still praying about it. I'm still seeking guidance. But it's a pretty clear direction that God is ushering me towards. And the same thing happened for Joseph. So Joseph, as a young boy, received these dreams from God. These incredible dreams of how his brothers would bow down and worship him. How God is going to put him into a position of leadership. How he's going to save lives. And this was pretty special for a kid to be having these dreams. But unfortunately for Joseph, he had brothers who also wished they had dreams. And resentment grew and jealousy grew, much like we see today. If you're in a group of guys and someone starts doing just better, maybe God just has more favor on them. And maybe that's just the human side of us. We just can't help but think, I wish that was me. And that's where Joseph's brothers were. So they were plotting against him. And eventually the best plan they could come up with was shoving him in a pit and eventually selling him off to Egypt as a slave. So I'm clicking the green button. There we go, that makes sense. Okay, if you guys will just follow me through to Genesis 39. If you've got your Bibles, you're welcome to open them up. If not, it's on the screen here. So, Genesis 37, verse 5. One night Joseph had a dream, and when he told his brothers about it, they hated him more than ever. So they sold him, or they threw him in a pit, and eventually they were selling him into slavery. So we know where Joseph ended up. He ended up in the house of the Egyptian advisor, Potiphar, and while he was there, God was still with him. He, by his own brothers, had been hurt, stripped of his family, stripped of his title, stripped of the love. He was in proper abandonment, proper loneliness, sold to an enemy state as a slave to work, to grovel, where before he was just a farmer. And now he's sitting there in a foreign country under foreign rule, but God is still with him. So the Lord was with Joseph, so he succeeded in everything he did as he served in the home of his Egyptian master. How incredible is that? God's favor upon Joseph's life, although not directly influencing Joseph at that moment, is still influencing around Joseph. That Egyptian master became very affluent. He was a wealthy man. Excavations and research into the area in Egypt where this is all taking place have shown grand temples built for Joseph. Very uncommon from that time period, but Joseph was so successful in this Egyptian household that even the Egyptians built temples for him. And this is all God's favor just radiating through Joseph. So today we're going to talk about how God is shaping men for a higher purpose, much like he did with Joseph. So things were going well. He was serving in this household, but man, oh man, the world was just out to get him. So this Egyptian master of his had a wife. I assume she was a very beautiful woman because she had a lot of confidence. She tempted Joseph at every point she could, just trying to get him just to be, a bit more intimate with her. And Joseph knew that this would go against his master's wishes. Not a master who prayed to the same God that Joseph did, but just the man who he was working with or working for. Joseph showed diligence, and the Lord remained with Joseph. So the false claims from this wife land Joseph in jail, and there he sits, but still God was with him. In prison there's a baker, and I forget the other, yes, a cupbearer. So while in prison, Joseph interprets dreams for this cupbearer and for the baker, and eventually the Pharaoh hears about this, and he's coming to understand that no, this man has got wisdom. God is with this man. I want to use this man for my own good. And again, this is not the God they are praying to. This is Joseph's God. Yet, God's faithfulness towards Joseph is influencing those around him. So, despite Joseph being in prison, him remaining faithful to God is still bringing glory to the kingdom around him. I want you to ponder on that. How many times have you felt that your situation is bad? Things aren't going great for you. Maybe a relationship is struggling. Maybe at work things are a bit slow. Maybe there's a quarrel within the family. Whatever it could be. But things around you are going so well. And you can see God in those moments. Could it not be that God is still working through you as well, despite your perspective on where you're at? And God does exactly this with Joseph. He doesn't bring him into a grand palace and he's not honored and lathered with gold in this moment. He's in a prison, and this is where God is with him. So he was there for years. He wasn't in prison for a short time, interpreted dreams, and then got out. He suffered. He suffered there for a long time. So he interprets this dream for the Pharaoh about the lean years and the years of plenty, and essentially saves that entire region. Going from where he was in a pit, he was working, things were going well, back to prison. Now God is telling him of these lean years, these years that are going to kill people. There's going to be famine. But God still being with Joseph, and Joseph remaining faithful to God, is able to interpret these dreams and to prepare adequately. God had put him in charge of Potiphar's estate or farm, where he was equipped. He learned skills of how to manage grain stores, how to manage workers, how to adequately prepare. So even in the time where Joseph was suffering, working as a servant in another man's house, God was preparing him for even a greater thing still. What if that time in prison was the quiet time Joseph needed to be able to draw closer to God, to hear God's voice clearer, to gain a better understanding, so that when Pharaoh presented him with these dreams, he had the wisdom and the knowledge to be able to interpret them. He was close enough to God. So Joseph is overseeing Egypt, the economy. He's basically like the second in charge. He's Pharaoh's right-hand man. But this famine wasn't just bad for Egypt, of course. It was bad for the entire area. Egypt was a superpower at that time in the area, controlling food and tax and basically determining what was happening in the region. And after all this time of just equipping and shaping and molding, here stands Joseph. And into his palace, or into the area that he was at, walks his brothers. After years and years, having believed Joseph either to be dead or to be a slave in a field somewhere, here stands their brother, unrecognizable to them. They don't know. You might not be able to see your future version of what you'd look like. Maybe this is a bit different. Maybe this is a younger man's perspective. But I want to be able to look at myself in 20 years and be unrecognizable, because God has done so much changing and shaping in my life. I want to stand and look at myself and think, despite all the struggles I've gone through, look at how great a man God has made. And that's exactly what the situation was for Joseph. So standing in front of Joseph, these brothers are obviously feeling a lot of guilt, a lot of remorse for what they've done. They understand the gravity of the situation. Here's the man charged with making the decision of who gets food and who doesn't get food. But a couple of years ago, you sold them for a few bucks along the side of the road. That's not a nice place to be in, hey? But Joseph says to them, I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt, but don't be distressed, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. It was not you who sent me here, but God. God sent me. Not, you sold me into slavery. Not, I was imprisoned. Not, I was abandoned, I was betrayed. No, God sent me. This is such a beautiful example of redemption, where Joseph has this full understanding of everything that he has gone through. He understands that that is from God. Yes, there were bad moments. Yes, there were struggles. But there was also good. There was blessing. There was provision. Here Joseph is now in a position to save his entire family. which had he not gone through what he gone through, would never have been possible. So Joseph realizes his suffering had purpose. The delay was by God's plan. It was divine. The pain was part of God's plan. Joseph tells his brothers again, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." Despite what one man decides to do to another, whether that be cause pain or hurt, just because I choose to do it doesn't mean that that is what God is intended for or for to happen. Just because his brothers intended to harm him doesn't mean that God wasn't able to still bring him into his glory and into his goodness. And that's freeing. That's incredibly freeing. And that still applies to us today. It's not just Joseph. Jesus paid the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. That despite what the world intends to do to us, we still have that freedom. We still have that grace. So, let's get down to the heart of it, the chunk. Your life is not out of control. It might feel like you're in a flat spin. It might feel like warning lights going off. But that's not true. If you feel like you're sitting at a point and you maybe haven't accomplished enough, or you feel like you've wasted your time, that's not true. That's not what God thinks. He doesn't look at the story he's woven for you and thinks, but at this point it'll get good. This is where it'll be exciting. This is where I'll start to use him. No, it's woven into the entire fabric of your life. God doesn't do random. I haven't read that in the Bible before. I'll be honest, I might not have read all the pages yet, but I haven't seen that. At the bottom, I've written there, God has a plan and a purpose for your life. If you are reading that, that's for you, which means it's for all of us. He doesn't have a plan for Cam, but not a plan for Garth. He doesn't have a plan for Ray, beautifully elaborate, laid out plan, but then for Graham, he said, I'll just wing it. There's still a plan. There's still a purpose for your life as well. So, how many of us are feeling like maybe we're stuck in a pit? We're feeling like someone's bartering for our lives. Are we being sold into slavery? Are we feeling like we're stuck in a prison? Or are you just waiting? Are you spending that 13 years of just the slow equipping? Are you just waiting? Or maybe you're just still holding on to pain. You haven't been set free. You haven't experienced that redemption. Wherever you feel you are, and perhaps you're not there, this is still a good revelation to have. Wherever you are right now, just know that God sent you. You are there because it is His plan and His purpose for your life to be there. Don't worry about what was before. Don't even worry about what's to come. God has a plan and a purpose for your life. Joseph is obviously a beautiful example of betrayal and redemption. But so too is Jesus. He was betrayed by those who he loved, who walked with him every day for years. He was denied 3 times by a man he loved as close as a brother. He was falsely accused, beaten, crucified. On the cross, he says, "Not my will, but yours be done." Just like Joseph, he understood that God sent him. God sent his only son. And Jesus understood that. He knew that despite all the suffering he was enduring, it was God's plan and God's purpose. So tonight, I want us to take just one thing home from this Joseph message. Despite where you're at now, despite what you're going through or waiting to go through, God is with you. God has a plan. God has a purpose. Just because it doesn't look the way you think it should look, doesn't mean God's not with you. Amen. Thank you.